think the question is, were the living conditions that way on purpose, or were they that way because of circumstance? Who is it that created these conditions? Well, in part, the people that created these conditions are bosses and political machines. Now, all right, so first off, what's a boss and what's a political machine? A political machine here is a group of people who work for a political party that controls local government. And their whole goal here was to trade votes for whatever you needed. If you were an immigrant and you came to the city for the first time, you lived in one of those tenements, then you might want to trade your vote for that political party for a job or for a place to stay or food or even protection. And what you see then are the people in charge of these political machines, in charge of these political parties, who are called bosses. Those are the ones that are in charge. They're the party boss. So first, this image here of what a political machine looks like and how it works. It's a lot like a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid, in red, is the party, all right, represented by this building. And the person who controls that party is the boss. And then underneath that are people who do different things for the boss and the party. And they had names. They were called captains or ward bosses. A ward is kind of like a neighborhood. And those people would distribute favors and jobs, money, police protection, whatever it is that you needed in exchange for your vote or doing whatever favors they needed you to do. You kept that party in power. They kept those jobs and rewards coming your way. All in exchange for the votes. Here you can see where it says the ballot. So that's the voting box. And what you have is the party boss in charge of counting the votes. In fact, this is Boss Tweed. As long as I count the votes, what are you going to do about it anyway? In other words, if he's the guy that's in control and he's the guy counting the votes, then he's the guy that's going to win. And they would make sure they would win, either honestly or dishonestly. One of my favorite stories is that they would take a guy. Here's a little guy, right? They would take him out to vote. Doot, doot, doot. And he would have a mustache and a beard. And he would go and vote. And after he voted, they would take him to the barber and they'd shave his beard. And then he'd go and he'd vote again with the mustache. And then they'd take him back to the barber and they'd shave his mustache. And he'd vote again. They would do whatever they needed to do to get the votes to win. Okay? So understand that. It's about winning. And I don't want you thinking that this was all just, happy-go-lucky, like you get whatever you need in exchange for your vote. There was a real question about whether or not these party bosses were getting rich from graft, obtaining money illegally, like through a bribe. You could do this with bribes or selling permits to friends, etc. One of the most richest and most famous bosses was Boss Tweed, that guy from the image up here that I showed you. He led the Tammany Hall machine. That's the name of the organization, Tammany Hall. It was Democrats, New York Democrats. He led them for that machine led New York City politics for almost 60 years. But what it comes down to is what some of these politicians in the machines call honest versus dishonest graft. And a guy named Alfred Plunkett gave us this quote, and he called this honest graft. I could get nothing at a bargain but a big piece of swamp, but I took it fast enough and held on to it. What turned out was just what I counted on. They couldn't make the park complete without Plunkett's swamp, and they had to pay a good price for it. Anything dishonest in that? And he says, there's nothing dishonest about that. He says that's honest graft, because what he knew ahead of time is that they were building this park. And so he went looking for land, and he got a big piece of swamp at a bargain. What's wrong with that? And then he sells it for a good price. That's not dishonest. That's honest graft. That's honest using information to your advantage. if it was honest when you did something like this for your party, for your city, for your people, that's honest graft. Because in Plunkett's view, what does the people get, right? What does the people get? What does the city get? They get a park. That's pretty darn good. What does he get? A good price for his money. Dishonest graft, in the mind of Plunkett, would be graft that is done just for yourself. You don't do it to benefit anyone else. You do it to just benefit yourself. That's what he would call dishonest graft. Any way you cut it, it doesn't matter whether it's honest graft or dishonest graft, it's still graft. You're still obtaining money using unfair information legally. But these were the people that controlled things. These are the people that made sure you did what they wanted you to do. And we'll talk more about them in class tomorrow, and we'll take a look at those living conditions of the working class poor in their tenement homes.